In this week's show, I interview the Buddhist trader Mercedes Oestermann Van Essen.
And I always say to beginning traders, work on your psychology first. Understand what you have to be, the kind of person you have to be in order to be a professional trader. By far the biggest hurdle is believing. We are, at the end of the day, what we think of ourselves. And believing in something and trusting that it works, the two go hand in glove, really. We don't see the world, be that the world of trading, our relationships, or anything else, as they are. Rather, we see the world, our trading, our relationships, as we are. Hence, I cannot say to anybody, right, you have to make, be it $100 a day, $500 a day, or $1,000 a day. But I can tell you one thing. If you have made $1,000 a day on a $10,000 account, you've been trading too big. And you're going to get burnt very, very badly.
From the outside looking in, it can sometimes appear that peak performers have an elusive talent or skill that sets them apart from the rest of us. However, what usually sets peak performers apart isn't what they can do, it's what they will do. You are listening to the Trading Edges Podcast, the podcast dedicated to seeking and sharing the best ideas and principles from peak performers across all domains of performance and achievement to help you discover your full trading potential.
Hello everyone, this is Houston, and welcome to episode 19 of Trading Edges. And in this week's episode, I had the pleasure of chatting with Mercedes Van Essen. And Mercedes is a trader and internationally recognized intuitive coach and mentor focusing on trading psychology. And I discovered Mercedes through the presentations she's done with Top Step Trader. And later, I found out that she has a very good body of work over at her website called the Buddhist Trader. Naturally, with a name like the Buddhist Trader, we explore how Mercedes believes the practice of Buddhism plays into trading. And even if you're not spiritual, I think many of the practices and concepts of Buddhism are very interesting, especially this idea that Mercedes refers to as showing up whole. And essentially, it mirrors this idea that I'm fascinated about. And that's around moving towards what Josh Waitzkin, who's the author of The Art of Learning, would describe as, quote-unquote, unobstructed self-expression. Because good trading is much, much more than just a cerebral exercise. Good trading is about having a refined decision-making process where your directed intentions and attention allows you to tap into greater levels of awareness that you can bring forth into your decision making. Now, a lot of people may call this intuition, but in a simple sense, I think it just boils down to being able to objectively tune into what's showing up for you while you trade. That is, your feeling states, your emotional states, and of course, your thoughts. And then layering this on top of what's objectively happening in the markets. Sounds easy, right? But in actuality, it's very hard because most of us carry emotional baggage, negative beliefs, biases that ultimately block us from objectively seeing reality. Rather, we filter the world by our beliefs and even misinterpret the world by what we want to see. Now, one practice we've spoken about time and time again that produces clear benefits is meditation. And a lot of this has to do with the ability, when you meditate, to begin to build the ability to pause before we react. Or as I've likened it, this feeling of more space or spaciousness. Dr. Daniel Siegel says, meditation gives us the space of mind in which we can consider various options and then to choose the most appropriate ones. That's so well said. And all this relates to the degree in which you and I can remain mindful and self-aware. If you've ever wondered just how mindful you are, there's actually a test called the Mindful Attention Awareness Scale, or MAS, which you can take to actually find out your levels of self-awareness and self-regulation. And I've posted the 15 questions from the MAS test over to the blog. And if you're interested, it takes just less than 5 minutes to complete. Now, after you've completed the questionnaire, if the results of your answers concern you, then I highly recommend enrolling in our 28-day free Mindfulness for Traders challenge, which is really a simple guided meditation where we email out some guided instructions each day for 28 days. Anyways, you can find links to the challenge in the show notes. Finally, what I love about the conversational format of this show are the occasions we just go where the conversation takes us. And it just so happens that Mercedes and I share a common concern around the growing phenomenon of EMF pollution, electromagnetic fields. And although the topic is still somewhat on the fringes, the growing science behind the broad dangers and implications are really worrying. So if you stick around to the end of the show, you'll hear Mercedes introduce the topic and her views on the implications for all of us actually who sit in front of the computer all day. As always, I hope you enjoy the show. You can find the show notes, transcript, and resources at thetradingedge.org/episode 19. And if you're enjoying the podcasts, please help me by leaving a positive review on iTunes. Now, on to the show. Hi, Mercedes. Welcome to the show today.
Hello, Houston. Thank you for having me.
Of course. It's great to have you on. Let me first begin the show by introducing Mercedes. Mercedes Oestermann Van Essen is an internationally recognized intuitive coach and mentor focusing on trading psychology, investment psychology, and intuitive entrepreneurship. Plus, she has a very, very cool website called the Buddhist Trader. So, Mercedes, I'm fascinated. So, what does that mean to be first an intuitive coach? And number two, how did you get into the business of trading, coaching traders?
I'll address the intuitive situation first because it really is at the core of all my coaching. Mm-hmm. And basically what that means, I help people to get out of their purely linearly directed thinking, meaning basically using the brain, the mind, alone in order to make any decisions, be that in their trading or indeed in other areas of their lives. And I call it the whole, engaging the whole body matrix. And so that's basically the core of my coaching. So how did I get into it? Well, the answer to that is actually very, very simple. We talked a little bit before the interview, Houston, and just, what you said about your story on learning to become a consistently successful trader. Mine is very similar. I had huge challenges. In fact, I did not recognize myself anymore after a year's trading. I mean, I was a complete wreck, and emotional issues came up which I didn't know I had. And it took me many, many, many years to work out effective tools and techniques on overcoming my challenges and becoming a consistently successful trader. And I think actually, my journey, it took me about 8 years or so. I had a break in between, and during that break, I started coaching, doing some general coaching, and I had done seminars before for military personnel in Germany mainly, and so I wasn't completely new to the field of coaching. So, but after I had a break from trading for a year and a half, and I learned a few specific coaching tools as well, mainly in the field of Buddhism. So then I went back to trading and continued coaching traders. And of course, as I coach traders, I feel every time I am working with somebody or working with groups, it's a fully interactive thing. And when I say fully interactive, the traders are gaining something from it, and I do as well. I love doing it.
And so where do you think that, if you could call it a breakthrough, so when you took that time off, was it something that you were able to integrate inside of yourself that kind of led to that breakthrough, or was it just something that you picked up and learned during that time off that made that shift?
As I was taking the break, well, at the end of the break, I thought I'd cleared all my issues. And at the time, I did an advanced emotional freedom technique training. I'm a theta healer, and I did various other things. I've done HUNA, NLP, and things like this. And then I realized, having done all this, by the time I went back to trading and coaching other people, that it was not just working on the emotional issues. Certainly they are very, very important. There is no way around it. You've got to clear your stuff, as I like to call it. But there is another aspect to it, which is perhaps as important, maybe even more important. And that aspect is understanding our true nature. And I know that's a very loaded expression, and it's bandied around everywhere on the internet. Step into your true nature, so it's become, sort of a bit of a pop culture word. So let me define what I mean by this.
Sure.
I'm talking about understanding who we really are. And we tend to think, well, we know what we are. I'm a human being, I am out here and I'm sort of working to better myself. Well, what we do not understand is that we are that there is an eternal nature to us. And if we can access this eternal nature of ourselves, we then have access to what in Buddhism is called oneness, and we all know that a famous thing when the Buddha one night he was sitting out gazing at the moon, and he had this insight that the moon and he were one. So and it's all about experiencing oneness, because when you do, in that moment, things like fear, our old conditioning, will recede into the background. I wouldn't say completely fall away, but in that moment where we have that experience, the self-inflicted boundaries begin to fall away, and we move from the survival mechanisms, which are our dominant thoughts, into the place of self-actualization, and that then becomes our dominant thought. So it's a completely different kind of being, and it's very important to understand that this is possible for everyone if they are willing to experience it, and if they are willing to expose themselves to the techniques to learn it, because obviously, like everything in life, it's not a one-day wonder.
Right. And so is that something you can experience and grow into outside of trading? You bring that mindset or being into trading, or is that something you kind of turn on while you're trading?
The aim is to live from that place.
Yeah.
And of course, initially, it's very much a conscious thing. It's, shall we say, baby steps.
Right.
You start out, you do techniques to get the experience. That's always the first step. And then when you realize how good it feels, because it's a very empowering, very soothing and comforting, expansive experience, so then you lay new neural pathways. One of the ways, and a very effective way of doing that, is guided meditations. And then you start bringing that into other aspects of your life. In other words, you clear out the boxes, because we have a box for spirituality, we have a box for trading, we have a box for being with the family,
right,
and yet another one for being with the children, and so on and so forth. It's about becoming so present with that state that it begins to permeate more and more of your life, every aspect of your life, and at some point it will become as natural to you as shall we say, putting the right foot in front of the left.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a procedure. It takes time. It's a journey.
And I really appreciate that kind of perspective because I think we explored this idea in previous shows about kind of this bringing all the elements of yourself into trading, because it's very difficult, and it's actually maybe a false dichotomy that we show up as different things at different places in our lives, as if we could become just a trader here and turn on being a parent and turn on being a friend and turn them off when we're not using those things. But I think the only people who can do that are folks who maybe schizophrenics or or sociopaths. That very much resonates with me. So,
there is actually a very interesting thing in psychology called transference. And transference refers to, say, if we have a certain behavior in one area of our lives, it will be replicated, maybe not exactly in the same manner, but some form of that behavior will be replicated in all other areas of our lives.
Right.
So, for example, if we lose our temper, are very self-critical, we'll do that in trading. We may get out of trades too early. We lose our temper, blaming ourselves for not being perfect.
Right.
Whatever it is. There is nothing what we do that can ever be seen in isolation. So, for example, when you do guided meditations or any other practice for that matter, and you say, right, I'm going to work on relationships, for argument's sake. By the time you have perfected the practice, or I don't like the word perfected, let's say make the practice your own, make it a integral part of you, you will find that you take that part automatically into other areas.
Right. Yeah, so true. So what do you typically see? So the traders that you coach, what do you typically see getting in the way of their success? Is it something that they're doing, or is it something that they're not doing that's kind of getting in their way?
Of course, everybody is different.
Right.
Well, first of all, the biggest thing is, and I would say that takes really the time to learn, because the techniques in and of themselves, they are simple, they are very, very easy. By far, the biggest hurdle is believing. We are, at the end of the day, what we think of ourselves. And believing in something and trusting that it works, the two go hand in glove, really. And to instill that belief into people that they can trade from a place of oneness, that universal laws work, that the universe is with us and not against us, I mean, that can take years and years and years.
Right.
So it's not I can teach somebody to be disciplined, and they will be disciplined. Discipline is not a problem for most traders. If anything, they have far too much of it. But at the core is really, really believing, becoming vulnerable and open to this and saying, right, yes, okay, I am going somewhere where I have never gone before. I have no reference points. Ultimately, I personally have no proof whether it works or not, because I haven't tried it. And when you're willing to do that and literally give yourself up to the journey and to the process, then, of course, a shift starts to happen, and that is the biggest hurdle.
So it sounds like there is an element of faith that has to happen there, because, like you said, you're kind of putting your feet into or starting a journey that you don't know the outcome.
Yes.
To have the belief in yourself that you can actually do that. So what's the difference then between having that deep belief in yourself or faith versus just simply having overconfidence? Saying that that's not grounded in reality.
So yes, of course, it's all about being grounded. So and when you say being grounded in reality, so we are coming back to that aspect of who are we? What is our reality here? Okay. So, and at the end of the day, we don't see the world, be that the world of trading, our relationships, or anything else, as they are. Rather, we see the world, our trading, our relationships, as we are.
Right.
So, and that again is a hard thing to swallow for people.
Yeah.
The belief that actually it's in me. What I believe becomes my reality that is reflected back to me in the mirror. And when I can accept that, and then step into the intention that I say, right, okay, this is how it is. I accept it. Now I am willing to change my beliefs. That's a huge step in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so what's a good way for a person to make sure that they're not, they come from a place of groundedness versus just, creating maybe unrealistic goals or these kind of linear goals which don't really play out. Do you have any ideas around people creating the right type of goals or the right types of expectations for themselves?
In my book, for new traders, the most important thing is risk management. It's a fact that a lot of traders out there, they come into the game, they think they can make a fortune with $1,000 in their account.
Right.
Well, I'd say stay out of it. Don't even start trading with $1,000.
Right.
If you want to trade, in my book, you should have at the very, very least $5,000, and you have impeccable risk management. And that is something that is purely driven mechanically by the linear mind. Yeah. For example, I always say you do not risk more than 1% of your capital on any given trade. And that means if you have 10 losing trades in a row, and it does happen, it does happen to the best of us. I had in August, I think, 7 losing trades in a row. And with all the work I have done on myself, and I teach this all the time, I was not a happy bunny, I can tell you that. However, the thing was, because I was playing very, very small, the drawdown on my account was negligible.
Yeah.
I was down, as a result of that, 3.5%, something like that.
Right.
So, okay, it's recoverable, it's no big deal. If you trade bigger and you suddenly find you are down 25%, you are going to have a problem of recovering from that loss. Let's forget about the emotional aspects here for a moment. Just the technical aspects of making back 25% of your capital is very, very difficult.
Yeah.
You're putting more and more risk on the table, which is what most traders do, and it's certainly something you should not be doing. You got to trade in such a way that whatever you do when you're going through a period of sustained drawdown, that it is not going to affect your ability to step back and say, right, okay, I have not seen that change in the markets, so I can now step back. I'll wait for a few days, and okay, yeah, I can see with clarity now what I have missed. Now we are in a wave 1 or, wave 3 or whatever, so I'm going to load up so that I'm able to get in there refreshed, re-energized with my capital still intact.
Right. Yeah. And then from an emotional perspective, how do you manage that drawdown? Let's say you do draw down 20-25%. How would you manage that?
Well, it becomes very difficult. First of all, I always say to new traders, know in advance where your cutoff point is. So, and of course, risk tolerance varies from person to person. And it also depends how much backup do you have. Are you out there? Are you a trader who has got another job, so you are learning to trade, and if you lose 25% at the end of the day, it's not the end of the world? Or are you out there and say, right, okay, I'm retired, or I'm wanting to become a full-time trader. I have set myself a year to learn to trade, and I can survive for 18 months without any income. Becomes a very, very different issue psychologically. And here I would say possibly you would want to pull the plug at about 15%. If you are down 15%, you're doing something wrong.
Right.
And you have to step back and look at what you are doing wrong. So that could be for new traders, obviously something technical. For all traders, new, intermediate and experienced traders, the psychology will be by far the most important aspect. And I always say to beginning traders, work on your psychology first. Understand what you have to be, the kind of person you have to be in order to be a professional trader. In order to make money consistently, you have to be a professional trader. And trading, particularly short-term trading, is a high-performance job. And people think they can go there and learn to trade in 3 months. Well, you don't.
You don't, exactly. You don't.
You don't.
You don't. And you bring up a good point there. I think just because new traders, they just haven't experienced enough markets or enough cycles yet. And when I speak to some new traders, sometimes I speak to them, and I can literally hear in their voices that they've taken on too big of a size of a position. Like the stress that's, the anxiety that's being caused by carrying these positions, I can literally hear it as they speak.
Yeah.
So I think, but the challenge for a lot of new traders is that they don't understand yet, or they haven't experienced how you can feel when you trade. It doesn't have to feel like riding a roller coaster.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely not. But you see, a new trader doesn't understand market context.
Mm-hmm.
You see, and this is perhaps the thing that takes the longest to learn. Understand market context so that you know when it's okay to go in with bigger positions,
Right.
and when you have to trade small and only risk 0.25% of your trading capital. You got to know that.
Yeah.
You cannot go in there saying, mechanically drumming out the trades. I'm going to trade so many lots of Dow every day,
Right.
come what may. It doesn't work like this.
Yeah.
Hence, I cannot say to anybody, right, you have to make, be it $100 a day, $500 a day, or $1,000 a day. But I can tell you one thing. If you have made $1,000 a day on a $10,000 account, you've been trading too big.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to get burnt very, very badly at some point. And I know a professional trader who did this fairly recently, and they have got a trading room out there. And now that sort of thing shouldn't happen. So, what I'm saying here, it's interesting. It's not only for new traders, this issue of risk, which keeps you alive at the end of the day. It's so big. Our emotions that drive us also are so strong because they all come from this survival aspect mostly.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes us do stupid things until it's deeply ingrained in us not to do it.
Right.
And that is where true professionalism comes into. A proper professional will not do it.
Right. And I call it the fallacy of goal setting, where you try to create these linear goals. And like you said, I want to trade 5 contracts of the Dow E-mini or 10 contracts, no matter what, right? And I'm going to watch my account grow exactly linearly.
Yeah, it's nonsense.
And that's nonsense, right? And you have an interesting article on your blog about mistaking sort of effect for cause, and I kind of see that, I see kind of relevance or tangents there, where people, they believe in this kind of linear view of the world, but in many cases, especially trading, it just never unfolds linearly.
No. Well, life doesn't unfold linearly. And what you just said about effect and cause, you see, people look at their trading. They work on their trading. They work on their strategy. And they think they are working on the cause of their problems. My trading strategy isn't good enough. I'm not holding positions long enough. I'm getting out too early. I hesitate getting in, blah, blah, blah. They are all valid points and points that need addressing. However, they are the effect and not the cause. Mm-hmm. The cause, and here we are coming back again to our, in inverted commas, our true nature. It's our inability to distinguish between what is really us and our conditioning that has made us believe in our limitations. And that is at the root cause of our problems. So we cannot get away from the fact that we have to look at ourselves, have to understand where we have made limiting beliefs so true that they are an integral part of ourselves, which we fully have integrated without ever questioning.
Right.
And we need to learn to distinguish between that and that, shall we say, that clean canvas. It's in quantum physics, it's also referred to as the 0-point field, and that is the place where I can create something new, where I can co-create, shall we say, with the universal forces out there, what I want my trading to look like. Mm-hmm. It's totally different way of approaching things.
And so so the work that you do, is there sort of a templated approach where you begin to create these types of intentions and maybe these beliefs and mindsets, and then you build your trading plan around that? Or is it more of a backwards work where you see where you're coming from now and you try to change, I guess, the way you're responding to these things?
Well, of course, if you're talking about me, I mean, having done so much work on myself, for example, I ask myself every day, how is my risk tolerance? And sometimes it's better than at others. If something has happened which may have upset me, maybe my risk tolerance isn't so great, so I trade smaller. For new traders, I would say the first part, and by far the biggest part of your trading plan, is learning about universal law. Understand the rules that govern reality creation. That's absolutely vital, because you cannot really become fully effective and develop your trading to peak performance unless you understand these basic rules. It's not complicated. I'm not asking people to take a degree in quantum physics or anything like this, but I'm saying here you absolutely must understand how universal law works, and then also how you have to work with it in order to create the desired outcomes as quickly and easily as possible. So that's always the first step, and only then can we look into the finer parts of trading, because trading isn't complicated. Support is support, resistance is resistance in all different time frames. Everybody knows the bigger time frames, resistance is more important than in lower time frames. Right. So then we have our different methodologies of how we trade in between, and to a large degree how we see that. Right. That is how the individual's personality.
So can you drill more into universal law? I've not heard of that before. So can you share some ideas around that?
Sorry, about?
Universal law. You were talking about some universal laws that you need to be aware of.
Okay, there are certain universal laws. The first one is the law of the observer, let's call it that, which has got a very important aspect on our trading. So that which you observe reacts to you. Energy is fully malleable, and it is interactive with you, and it's intelligent. So there are scientific experiments which have been carried out in the 50s. The scientists Wheeler and Heisenberg, just to mention a couple, did some of these groundbreaking experiments which have formed the basics of quantum physics as we know it now. I describe all this in my book, The Buddhist Trader. In detail, I explain the experiments. So you need to understand that it's not a mumbo jumbo, but it's a very simple universal law. When you look at something, that what you see in the mirror will change. So in very practical terms, when you are looking at a chart in a market that is going sideways for hours, which most traders have got great difficulty with, including me, so what you're looking at begins to change, and you suddenly see an entry point here and an entry point there. Needless to say, you get stopped out. You didn't see these entry points before. Then, okay, you walk away thinking, well, it's silly what I'm doing, only to come back 2 hours later, looking at the same chart, thinking, good God, what an idiot have I been? How could I have possibly taken that trade? And we all know, hindsight is a great thing. Well, the reality here is this is how universal law works. And I'm almost preempting myself here. One of the biggest and best things you can learn is the law of walking away. Mm-hmm. When it doesn't gel, the biggest favor by far you can do yourself. And I know it's also one of the most difficult thing to do is you walk away from your screens, and I don't care what you do, take the dog for a walk, have a cup of tea, play with the children, meditate,
Yes.
get away from the screen for half an hour, for an hour, and come back. And it's always far better to miss a trade than screwing up.
So true. And are there any other universal laws? You said the observer. Did I miss?
Well, yes. I mean, there are, of course, there are several.
Yeah.
Another one is the law of grounding. A big problem we have, and why our brains don't function so well these days, is that people aren't grounded. You know, we are out in our heads. For starters, when you are using your frontal cortex all the time and you are thinking in linear manner and you think things have to go from A to B, here is my absolute perfect entry point. I'm going to take profits here at this exact point.
Right.
Boom, boom, boom. You are in linear thinking mode. You are not grounded. And that means you are not in touch with the energy, with the feel of the market, what's also referred to as being in the flow. So when you're coming from the frontal part of your brain, you cannot be in flow. So the moment you become grounded, and that means grounding is very simple, actually. The principle of grounding is very simple. It means that you are connected with the earth and that you are connected to the scalar energy of the central sun. And then you are in wholeness, in oneness, and you can function, and you will find it much easier to spot, for example, when you shouldn't be trading.
Right.
You will find it much easier to walk away. And in that moment also, fear and things fall away.
Yeah. And
grounding is vitally, vitally important, and yet we are out there, we are doing everything to unground ourselves.
Yeah,
99% of people trading, walking around totally ungrounded all the time.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. I think, as traders and even society in many ways, we've been taught to live in our headspace.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
we get rewarded for that, so we think that we need to do more of that and even sharpen that tool even more.
Yes.
But in fact, we're just we're losing touch of other elements of ourselves, and I really
Very
believe
much
that.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really believe that.
Universal law number 3. Everything comes from within. There is nothing whatsoever outside of us. Nothing at all. What you see outside, and that includes your keyboard, your screens, and everything else, has first been created inside of you. Whether you have done it consciously or not, it has been created by you through your multi-generational DNA, shall we say, because it's not just you, it's what you have inherited from your parents and things like this, which you have made true by consistently repeating the same beliefs day in, day out, incessantly, in any moment of time, whether you are aware of it, and I dare say you are not. That is how reality has been created.
Yeah.
What you see is nothing but the result of thinking that has been going on for years and years and years.
That's so true. And is there a good place for us to read more about these different universal laws? Because I'm sure there's somewhere you can probably drill into and explore a lot more, because it's a fascinating topic.
Well, yes. I say to traders, everybody should get the Bhagavad Gita, and you can get it as an audio as well as a book and read it. I think I have read it about 100 times and listened to it probably more than 100 times. And I would say certainly get the Buddhist Trader, because it's all explained in the Buddhist Trader.
And it's so fascinating how these laws outside of trading relate so much to trading.
Well, everything relates to everything. I mean,
Right.
There is really, you see, when we talk about universal law, when we talk about any aspect of quantum physics, for that matter, when we talk about any aspect of our spirituality, it's all inclusive.
Right.
You cannot take it from one area and put it into another area. All you can do is become aware that it is a wholesome thing. It applies to everything.
Right. And so how do you see the practice then of, of Buddhism then playing into trading? You kind of spoke about it already, but what are some of the elements of Buddhism you found you've been able to bring into trading, or that you find empowering?
I would say the most empowering concept is from Buddhism is the concept of oneness, and doing techniques that brings one into that space where one is one with the market. And here we are coming back to what we said right at the beginning of the interview, learning to allow boundaries to go and get into your innate abilities, in your innate intuitive abilities, where you, through your feeling and through your being, where you're becoming very sensitive to your own energies as they interconnect and relate with the markets. That is the biggest gift of Buddhism, and it'll help you trade so much better when you get it.
In what way? So I'm curious. So what's the benefits there for those folks who this is completely foreign to them? They've never heard of such a thing. How does that relate to trading? How can that help a trader?
How does it relate to trading? Let's take that example again. We are sitting here. The market is moving sideways.
Yeah.
So, and you are trading, let's say, a tick chart or something like that, and it's just going nowhere. Now, if you are in oneness, you will know, because there is an energy, a measurable energy in the market. You will feel that energy, and you know when it's going to break out. So, and what that concept of oneness in Buddhism is also, it's been proven scientifically. Take, for example, 9/11, when there are devices out there that can measure the electromagnetic fields and collective consciousness out there. The two really are one and the same thing. So before 9/11, the field, they had very high measurements in the field. And a few hours later, 9/11 happened. The same happens before major earthquakes. Now, animals, they feel it. They will walk away, seek a safe place. But we humans, because we are coming back to the situation of being grounded, we are so ungrounded, we are so disconnected, we do not have that feel. So we are trading a system mechanically, thinking it's going to make us money day and night, like a robot.
Right. And so how do you start to get in touch with that, with that side of, would you call it intuition, or how would you start tapping into that side of yourself? It's
your intuition. Again, brain harmonization is the thing.
Like coherence.
You get into that through meditation, and also clearing your field of emotional issues, because if you have emotional issues, they will override your intuition, and you will not know whether it's your intuition speaking to you or your conditioning that tells you, I must trade so many trades per day, and if I don't take that many trades per day, then there is something wrong. So it's a decoupling from who you were or you think you are, which is your conditioning, and letting go of what your parents have told you about how life works, because most of it is nonsense, and learning a new truth, and learning also a truth that's true for you. Let me give you an example. Maybe you're not an early riser. There is no law that says you have to start trading in the morning at 9:30 when New York opens.
Right.
Okay, maybe you'd have your best trades when you are trading at 12 o'clock onwards. This is a little bit of a joke, but quite amusing. I know a professional trader here in London who lived in Japan for some time, was trading in a large brokerage house. Well, he had his best trades at lunchtime, but what did they do? They realized in the stock market in Japan, they have an hour's break. People would put their stops in, so they are taking great fun out of going out and running people's stops.
Right.
I mean, okay, that's a bit of a joke, but what I mean is there are patterns. You may have your own pattern. You will know there is a time at the day when you are in much better form, you focus better, and then you trade better. And then, of course, it'll be much easier for you to connect to your true essence, which is that whole body matrix that includes your intuition, that includes, of course, also your mental acuities. You know, I mean, we're not saying don't use the mind. The mind is very useful. Mm-hmm. It helps you to pull the trigger and make flawless executions. But there is much, much more to it than just the linear mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I just finished reading a great book from E.L. Winter. I think the book was called The Rationality of Emotions, and he spoke to it there as rational thinking unchecked with emotions is actually quite harmful. We want to have that balance of the two, using rational thinking with emotions, and not try to suppress or turn off our emotions, like many of us
do that.
Yeah, try to do.
Emotions are vital, and also they are needed for decision making.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
So, but it's a different kind of emotion we are talking about here. We are not talking about, we got to run away, because that's an emotion created from fear. No, we are talking about the emotion, gosh, that looks like an exciting trade. Wow, everything is lining up. Mm-hmm. Yes, the timing is right. Whoopee! You know, I can trade an extra few lots or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, it's that kind of thing, and it's an inner knowing, and it's positive. I've used the word expansive before. Mm-hmm. That comes from an expansive place versus the conditioned emotions of fear, anxiety, of stress, which are exactly the opposite.
You're trying to get away. Yeah. And I just think I'll unpack another idea you shared there and maybe just revisit it again. I thought you said something quite interesting about, only being able to tap into our intuition so long as we're not carrying too much emotional baggage, and getting that blended in with our emotions. We can't differentiate between what our baggage is, some of those negative emotions we're carrying, versus the intuitive elements that we're trying to recognize, but we can't because of the negative emotions.
Yeah.
Is there any kind of you talked about EFT or emotional release techniques in the beginning?
Yes.
Do you have any other techniques you would suggest traders explore or check out if they struggle with trying to unpack their negative emotions from positive ones?
It's all about becoming aware, and that's again becoming still, going into the center, and becoming aware of what's going on there. When you are in a deep theta state, you become aware what is going on around you. Again, I talk a lot about guided meditations, but really only because they are so wonderfully effective. It's one of the best tools out there, particularly for those who haven't had a lot of experience with this kind of thing.
Right.
And EFT also works very well. For example, I have actually in the Buddhist Trader and in Stop Procrastination, I have in both books the Stop Procrastination book actually is a program to rid yourself of all the issues to do with hesitation, insecurity, doubt, and so on and so forth. And I use the EFT technique there. And it's EFT sessions anybody can do. They are easy to learn. It's not difficult. And it'll clear stuff. It'll clear stuff because it uses a combination of you are tapping on major meridian points, so you're clearing the energy flow, whilst at the same time you are saying certain sentences out aloud, and that together is a very, very effective technique because it stimulates two different parts of the brain.
And what I'll do is I'll definitely link to Mercedes' two books that she just talked about there in the show notes, so you can check out those books if you're interested in that topic further. But maybe with the remaining time that we have, because we're getting close to the end of our interview, I do want to check out or explore a couple more ideas with Mercedes. Number one is just around, you talk to a lot of traders and you coach a lot of them. Do you see any common habits in the ones who do, in the great performers, the ones who are really successful? Do they share any common traits that you've been able to distinguish or notice?
Yes. A professional trader will always show up. Something major would have to happen for them not to show up. They are also willing to do whatever it takes to remain on track and become better. It's really it's a lifestyle.
Right.
It's a lifestyle choice. It's not saying, right, I'm going to read a book and that's it, and then I'm going to go back to how I am. They do workshops, they do master classes, mastermind groups. I mean, they have different things. I know a professional trader in one of my mastermind groups. So he runs. That's his thing. He runs every morning before trading. So it doesn't have to be any particular thing, but they all have a certain routine. Most of them meditate. In fact, actually, all the traders I work with, they all meditate. And if only because I got them onto it, and they found it very, very beneficial.
Yeah.
And they learn to look at their emotions, and when they see something they can't handle and it comes up for the biggest and the best of us, they seek help.
That's valuable. That's a big insight there. You know, a lot of us try to figure it all on our own, maybe because we have coming from a place of perhaps having too much ego and thinking that we could just figure it all out on our own. I think that can be oftentimes harmful to our development because we get in our own way.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, when you look at the top performers, they all have, take Tony Robbins, for example. Tony Robbins has got not one coach, he has got several coaches.
Right.
When Tony Robbins goes on one of his big performance, and he is that powerhouse of energy out there, well, how does he do it? He has got a guy in the background who works on him, opening his meridians. So he goes out, does a performance, takes a break. This guy works on him. He comes out again. And so it goes on. He works on himself non-stop. And all the top performers, they all have coaches.
Yeah. And it sounds like he has a supporting cast. I think, you know, as traders, we have to think of that way as well. Like, who's our supporting cast?
Yes.
That could be our friends, our family, you know, our children. It's not a job that you have to take on by yourself, right? You have to have that supporting cast behind you to really enable you to really succeed to the next level.
Definitely,
Yeah.
It's absolutely vital.
Cool.
And you got to train that. In the case of the private trader, quite often when people, they may have been working away somewhere and now they are working from home.
Right.
It requires a change in atmosphere and attitude. It's a change in atmosphere that requires a change in attitude. So the spouse of the traders need as much training as the trader themselves.
Right, exactly. I can totally see that. Because they have to be on board. They have to support this trader and say, yes. I'm going to give this person the space they need to do their business.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And to be able to perform.
Yeah.
Yeah, great
and how
insight.
do I deal with a trader when things are not so good? How do I handle the situation?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think that'd be a great class to put together, is teaching trader spouses how to live with traders.
Yes, actually, it's a thought, isn't it?
Yeah. It'd be a great one.
I talked about this with one of my coaches. She's actually a Canadian. We mentioned that a while ago, but it's never come off. So.
I think it'd be a great course to take. So with the time remaining, I know we started this conversation. Actually, before our conversation started, we were talking about some of your other projects, Mercedes. Maybe you can share with the audience the one project you're working on with regards to, kind of the EMF situation that's happening, and maybe I'll just set the stage quickly for the audience. Mercedes and I were talking about, sitting around our offices all day and getting exposed to all this EMF, all these electromagnetic fields and radiation as we sit around our Wi-Fi routers and our cell phones and so forth, and the amount of illness that we're seeing in the world nowadays. Do you want to comment on that, Mercedes?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. It's EMF is a major contributing factor to brain fog, And the reason, let me explain from a scientific perspective a little bit how it works. In a healthy environment, for example, if you go on a mountain, there is a natural interchange between scalar energy and the Earth's energy. So in the magnetic fields, it's like breathing in and out. There's constant exchange of energy, and that creates a very smooth background humming. For example, the Schumann waves in a healthy situation are at 7.83 hertz. Now, of late, the Schumann waves have gone up to, they are nearly at 13%, so much higher. So what that means for humans, for starters, we are not in this gentle background hum where it goes Instead, we are working against a background of like this. So it's like listening to disco music all the time. You know, whilst it might be fun sometime, but if you get it all the time, it makes you freak out. So what it does, it makes the energy in our homes, in our field, literally chaotic. And whilst chaos is a very vital and important part of growth, because an organism has to go into temporary chaos in order to then realign itself, or shall we use the word reinvent itself on a higher level. That's a very normal and natural evolutionary process. Every open-ended part goes through, and human beings are open-ended, the world is open-ended, trading is open-ended. So that's just how it works. Now, when you are sitting in front of a computer screen, when you are in an environment where there is Wi-Fi technology, and also, by the way, electric circuits, which normally where computers are, there are lots of cables and plugs and what have you, the energy is constantly in chaos. In other words, it's not running smoothly, it's constantly agitated. So the brain has to compensate before it even can begin making a trading decision. It has to compensate for this energy. Imagine like tuning into a radio station, and the radio station is sending a very crackly signal, and you're desperately wanting to understand what the broadcaster is saying. So, and you can't get a clear signal. So, and this is what our brain is doing constantly when it's sitting in front of the screens. And from my research, which I have done for the best part of 20 years, it is one of the contributing factors that make it so difficult for traders to focus. I believe it is one of the major factors why traders blow out. I mean, I can tell you from my own experience when I first started trading, and I had not spent excessive hours in front of a computer, which was my choice from even years before then, when I was working in an office, working with computers, and I thought, this is not my cup of tea. I didn't know about electromagnetic fields then. When I came back to working on the computer, I realized very, very, very soon that the computer was draining my energy and was affecting me. So the question, of course, is, how do we deal with it? Can we counteract it? And of course, the answer to both questions is yes. We can, if we are developed enough, the higher our own personal vibrational field is, the less affected we are by electromagnetic fields. However, for the majority of people, we are not that highly developed and not vibrating constantly on that high frequency that we are permanently not only immune to the effects of electromagnetic radiation, but also that it just simply doesn't affect us. So at some point, you get tired, it has more of an effect on you, because the higher your vibrational field is, the more expands out. The lower the vibrational field is, the more it closes in on you. For example, your auric field in a healthy person, it goes out 3 or 4 feet beyond you. when you're not healthy or when your immune system is under pressure, as it is when you're working with these chaotic energies all the time, it closes in on itself. And then you have got the issue of entrainment. The less power you have yourself, you entrain with the energies of the screen. So you become lower and you don't even notice how it's happening because it's a gradual process. It doesn't happen from one day to another. It is something that can happen over months upon months and upon months. And this is, again, we are coming back to meditation here, where guided meditation is very, very helpful because it trains you to become more aware when you are being more at the effect of your environment.
Right.
So that's the one thing. And the other thing, which is what I have found, having done a lot of feng shui type space clearing, which is basically nothing else but making sure that the energy flows clearly and unobstructedly in offices and vibrates at a high level, we found that certain types of crystals work extremely well because crystals are energy conductors and energy receivers. And what happens when the energy comes in from the sun, the scalar energy, which we are all effectively able to receive scalar energy, but the crystal, due to its very orderly structure, takes the energy in and it comes out on the other end, if you like, in a much more orderly form. So it doesn't completely get rid of the electromagnetic fields, but it creates a cohesive energy. So when crystals are grouped together in a certain form, they can clear spaces, literally. They can clear geopathic stress, which is another form. They are a form of ley line that cause immense stress on the body and always very often present where electromagnetic radiation has been present for a long, long time. So these can be neutralized. And now my latest project, knowing how important this is for all of us, because electromagnetic radiation is everywhere. We cannot get away from it. And we certainly are not going to stop using our cell phones, our computers, our iPads,
it's only getting worse.
Or electricity, so it's there for all we know. For the time being, it's there. So I'm in the process of making, I think they are very beautiful, little crystal sculptures, and they have different types of crystals. Some have 24 karat gold in them because gold has got very high healing properties, and all of them have got the effect of neutralizing the space, certainly in the room you are in, and some go beyond. They are very powerful and they look beautiful. They can sit on a desk and they are basically beneficial to your mental and to your physical health. And ultimately, I dare say they'd help you train better because they reduce the strain on the brain and on the physical body.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing more of that project as it comes out, Mercedes. So do let us know as things progress.
Yes, definitely. Yes, I will do.
And if all this sounds woo-woo, this is actually backed by some pretty rigorous science. And
yes,
EMF is certainly it's not a new topic, but it seems to be getting more and more. More and more people are getting concerned about it because, as Mercedes said, we're only seeing the amount of devices that are connected to Wi-Fi and internet. It's just really expanding exponentially. You can just imagine the day, we're all wearing these, Apple Watches on our wrist that actually have Wi-Fi signals emitting from them. Just think about the risk to reward there. Like, do you really believe that it's really worth, getting some sort of cancer to get your emails a little faster? It's one of those trade-offs, right? You really have to wonder sometimes.
Good point.
Yeah,
very good point.
So it's fascinating.
Yeah. Actually, could I just say here, you were saying, yes, scientifically, what I've just shared, it is very much being studied in Russia. The scientist Alexander Golov has done some amazing research on pyramids. And there is on MIT, there is a crystallography course. It's not for the uninitiated. It's not that easy to understand, but there is a lot of research out there that proves what I have just talked about in layman's terms, so that everybody can understand what it's all about.
Yeah, and I even find like Dr. Jack Cruz's work, his blog, he's got a blog, I'll put it in the show notes. He also has some really good stuff. It's quite complicated to read sometimes, but like you mentioned about, crystals and that type of stuff, just this idea of, of water also being one of these elements where you could have structured water that can also reduce or, it plays a big role in what we're talking about today around EMF, but it's also another, deep and fascinating topic.
Very much so, yeah. I use techniques to structure water, and I've taught it to other people. It's actually very, very simple.
Yes, exactly. It sounds complicated, but it's actually quite simple to do. But we are going up on our time now. So, Mercedes, one last question. What's the best place people can stay in contact with you? So if they're interested in what we talked about today and want to explore your world more, where can they find out more about you and where can they follow you?
Well, go to my website, thebuddhisttrader.com. And there you will find, well, actually, I've got a free course people can sign up to. There have been some problems with that course of late, but I hope that has been sorted now with the delivery of that course, I mean. Certainly sign up for my Facebook and Twitter feeds, and they can be accessed on my website, thebuddhisttrader.com. Buddhist spelled Buddhist, and then the word trader, all one word. And if you sign up for my newsletter, you automatically get updates. If you sign up for the free course, you get automatically newsletter updates from me.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Mercedes. I'm going to ask one final question to the audience. And, Mercedes brought up time and time again about the benefits of meditation. And interesting enough, about 3/4 of all the traders I've interviewed on the show are meditating. So I'd love to hear from the audience. Who in the audience is meditating? And if you haven't checked it out, I actually have a 28-day mindfulness challenge on the website, which I'll link to in the show notes. For those folks who have tried but couldn't quite keep the habit, check out the challenge. It's actually a fun one. So, as usual, you can find the show notes, transcripts, and the resources all at the blog at thetradingedge.org. And this episode is episode 19. So go to thetradingedge.org/episode 19. Mercedes, thank you again for the conversation today. It was a lot of fun.
It's been a pleasure.
Sounds good. Take care.
And you.
Bye now.
Goodbye.
You've been listening to the Trading Edges podcast. We've taken this interview and summarized all the big ideas so that you can take action. Just head over to thetradingedge.org/podcast to find the show notes, transcript, resources, and to continue the conversation.